Hi guys, it's Mrs. Mattingly here. I'm in my car and this is the second time I'm doing this, so I'm trying to redo chapter 38 of Addison, Cooke, and the Tomb of the Khan. It starts on page 381 and it's called The Cliff and the River. Addison's group breakfasted on jerky nobody had packed for the journey. Molly performed her morning martial arts practice with I Don't Know. They sparred on top of the rocky outcropping as morning light filled the valleys below. Molly was pleased to land a kick. "You've been practicing," said I Don't Know, rubbing her hip where Molly had clipped her. I Don't Know was older and taller than Molly, with a longer reach. She did not expect Molly to slip anything through her defense. She smiled. "You're strong. I can tell you're a soccer player. But you need one more ingredient before your kicks have true power." Molly was all ears. "Don't hold your breath. You'll move faster when you exhale. Whether you swing a sword, a punch, or a kick, always breathe out. Your life force is in your breath." Molly tried her Mongol Zo roundhouse kick, this time with a sharp exhale. It felt smooth and effortless. She was improving. She smiled at I Don't Know. Addison's team spent the morning hiking north through a white birch forest. After a few miles, the woods deepened into Scotch pine and finally towering Siberian lark that had blocked out the sunlight high-rise apartment buildings. The sun like high-rise apartment buildings. At last, nobody found the forbidden river that spilled down the side of the mountain. Over millennia, it had cut a deep gorge. White waters raged 1,000 feet below, but high in the cliffs the sound was peaceful. Addison took out his notebook and reread Sir Frederick's final clue. "In the land no living Mongol may pass, I climbed the Eagle Cliff. I swam beneath a river and crawled under a mountain to the city of the dead. Know the Khan to open the tomb, know thyself to escape." Addison turned to nobody and I Don't Know. "We need to find this Eagle Cliff. Is there a cliff in the mountain range shaped like an eagle?" Everyone scanned the bluffs on either side of the gorge. There were jagged rock formations in all directions, but none that resembled an eagle. For an hour they hiked south along the gorge, keeping their eyes on the summits of the mountains. At over 7,000 feet, Addison's group was huffing for breath from lack of oxygen. Addison felt his thoughts wandering and sensed his exhaustion. His tired feet plodded along the uneven rock, each step an unpleasant jolt on his aching limbs. He wondered if they were even in the right part of Mongolia. He was beginning to have thoughts of giving up. Eddie put his hands on his knees and bent double, gulping for breath. "This is hopeless. This mountain range goes on forever. We keep climbing and climbing, and I don't see any cliff that looks like an eagle." Addison tried to think of something positive to say, but found he happened to agree with Eddie. "We've just been guessing. We don't even know if we're within 100 miles of an eagle cliff." In frustration, Eddie picked up a rock and chucked it hard across the narrow gorge. When it struck the opposite bluff, the entire face of the cliff erupted in motion. 100 golden eagles took flight. Their mighty wings pounded the air. They circled overhead, shrieking, their 7-foot wingspans casting dark shadows that sped across the landscape. After a minute of ear-drumming, piercing squalls, the eagles gradually settled back into their ancient eyries along the cliff wall. "Eagle Cliff," said Raj, dumbfounded. "Sometimes," said Eddie. "I'm happy to be wrong." The team hiked along the rim of the chasm, searching for a place to cross. The eagles seemed to roost only upon the south-facing side, where they enjoyed the most sunlight. At last, Raj, scampering ahead, found a spot where the gorge narrowed. A single spur of stone jutted most of the way across the precipice. The gap was a 6-foot jump. One by one, they took running starts and leaped over the 1,000-foot drop. Raj insisted on going first, followed by Molly. The dark hag went next, making the jump seem effortless. Addison and Eddie, dreading a fatal plunge, went last. Soon they were all clinging to the lip of the Eagle Cliff. They edged along the promontories, using cracks and handholds to maneuver their way higher. The eagles regarded them suspiciously from their perches. Addison had gotten a bit better about his fear of heights, but he still had a healthy interest in not dying. All in all, climbing up the precipice was not among the brighter spots of his day. Raj navigated his way up the steep rock until he reached the level plateau. He shouted instructions, encouragement, and suggestive criticisms to the team until they all crested the cliff and lay flopped beside him, catching their breath. A flat field spread out before them, bursting with wildflowers. Sorry, my nose itch. The team lunched on the remains of nobody's mutton jerky. They crossed the field and found a river where they refilled their canteens. "This may be the route Sir Frederick took," said Addison, examining the lay of the land. "He said to cross the Eagle Cliff and swim beneath a river." He had barely finished his sentence before Raj tore his shirt off and plunged into the frigid mountain stream. Despite his shivering, Raj swam back and forth across the river, dipping his head under the clear water. "I don't get it," he called at last. "I'm swimming beneath the river, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for." Raj climbed out of the water, dripping wet, and lay on a sunny rock to dry. "Wow, you're finally clean," said Molly. Raj frowned, a bit disappointed. He preferred not to attract wolves with his freshly clean scent. He wondered if his prized can of bear spray would also work on wolves. Addison paced in a circle, quieting his mind, working over the puzzle of the river. He thought back on everything he had read about the Khan's burial. He pictured the funeral procession, Genghis Khan's body draped in white robes and bundled with sandalwood to prevent insects from devouring the remains. Addison spoke his thoughts aloud because that had often helped him in the past. Legends claim the tomb was hidden by 10,000 horsemen who trampled the earth to make it even. Then a river was diverted and a forest planted over it, burying the site forever. "Do you believe it?" asked Molly. Addison stared at the river, thinking. It was a young river, nowhere near as old as the one that carved the 1,000-foot gorge in the mountain. In fact, thought Addison, judging from the shallow banks, the river might only be a few hundred years old. He arrived at a decision and headed upstream. Genghis Khan moved heaven and earth to hide his tomb. We have to move heaven and earth to find it. "What are we doing?" asked Raj, jogging after him. "Diverting the river. If the Mongols moved it here, we need to move it somewhere else. It's the only way we can truly see what Sir Frederick saw beneath the river." Addison did what he always did when he needed to cause a large amount of destruction. He turned to Raj. "I'm on it." Raj eagerly scrambled up the hillside until he found a massive boulder overlooking the river. His plan was to shove it loose and send it rolling downhill to block the waterway. Raj nearly gave himself a hernia pushing on the giant rock, but it didn't budge. Frustrated, Raj found a large stick, levered it under the rock, and heaved. The stick snapped. Losing patience, Raj climbed higher up the hillside, searching for a bigger stick. In his haste, he tripped over some creeping vines and landed hard on some loose shale. The shale rocks skittered downhill, kicking loose a few large rocks. Soon, boulders tumbled downhill, pushing even larger rocks ahead of him. Addison's team looked up in horror to see a full-scale avalanche thundering straight toward them. They turned and ran. An entire hillside worth of stone and dirt crashed into the river, blocking it entirely. The river water backed up, overfilled its banks, and found a new course down the mountainside. Addison marveled at Raj's astonishing capacity for destruction. Even Mother Nature was no match for him. "Good work, Raj." Raj emerged from the woods, weaving unsteadily, blanketed in dust. He gave Addison a weak thumbs up. I Don't Know performed a ritual to appease the Nagas, or water spirits, for disturbing the river. The group fanned out along the drained riverbed, searching for any symbol or clue left among the debris. The wet earth was soggy, muddy, and clogged with leaves. Nobody searched for a spot deep enough to fill his canteen. Climbing down among rocks once hidden deep underwater, he shouted for Addison's team to come and look. When they all gathered near him, he pointed. In the smooth, stony side of the riverbed lay a tunnel carved in the wet rock, large enough for a man to walk through it. Centuries of water were still dribbling out of it when the group stepped inside the cave. Addison's flashlight emitted a weak orange glow as the batteries ran down. Moving quickly, they followed the path deep into the mountain. As the flashlight began to sputter out completely, the group reached a steep chute, dimly lit by gray light. It was the only way out. For a few minutes, no one could figure out how to climb the steep chute. The rock walls were too slippery, and the bottom of the vault was riddled with sharp stones that would fillet any climber who chanced to fall. "I know the answer." Raj pointed to a crack leading directly up the rock face. In mountain climbing, this is called a fist crack. You wedge your flat hand in the crack like shaking hands. Once your hand is in the crack, you clench it into a fist. It anchors you to the rock, and you climb straight up. Raj demonstrated the technique, spidering up and down the slick stone with ease. Addison didn't love getting his hands dirty, but he didn't love being trapped in underground tunnels either. When he slid his hand into the limestone fissure and flexed his fist, he found he could get a strong grip on the rock. Hand over hand, the team hauled themselves up the chute until at last they saw daylight. "Raj, I love it when your survival tricks actually work." "Me too," said Raj, breathing fresh air. "Me too." The group emerged in a secret valley completely encircled by towering cliffs. Addison realized they had found the only passage into this hidden world. His pulse quickened when he gazed out at the field before him covered in stone monuments. A necropolis. "Wow," said Molly, taking in view. "Wait, what's a necropolis?" Addison tightened the strap on his messenger bag and scanned the barren ruins. It means City of the Dead. Dun dun dun.